Do you believe in God? At first glance, Avery Mayo's channel, aside from its huge number of subscribers for only having 2 videos uploaded, is rather unremarkable. The first video is a Skywars match where the description just says, "Guess who got mayonnaised?" And the second one is simply titled, "Strange Book That I Didn't Write." In many ways, it reminds me of one of the strangest Minecraft videos uploaded to this platform, Extraña casa que yo no construí. This is a video uploaded 15 years ago by the user Death's Conan Mask, which features an alteration to his base that he doesn't remember making. A bridge, a platform, and chests that shouldn't have been there. The reason I mention this is because this video was real, and in Minecraft, it's not that unusual to have bugs or glitches that somehow combine worlds and result in these anomalies. There always seems to be a logical explanation for these cases in the game. The strange book mentioned in the video is one that was found in the center of a mine, which, according to him, appeared out of nowhere. In fact, Avery himself in the description seems to confirm that he doesn't recognize absolutely anything he's seeing. And then we have the writing. "Whatever you do at the crossroads, don't turn left. Don't be fooled, it's listening to you. You can't fool it, it's listening to me, it's watching me, it's not from this world. At the crossroads, don't turn left. At the crossroads, don't turn left. At the crossroads, don't turn left." This is interrupted by a code at the end, and that's it. That's the whole video. But that's not the only strange thing in this video. Something frustrating is that if we decide to just focus on the code, we'll quickly hit a wall. And even Wifis, the user who has documented the case more than anyone else, couldn't figure out what this means. It turns out that for just one frame right before the video ends, we can see Avery's inventory, an inventory that hides a new code, which can be deciphered by noting the items and their quantities. If we write down the first letter or number of each item, and capitalize it if there's more than one, we get an alphanumeric line of text with the characteristic structure of a Google Drive link, a link with 3 very interesting files inside. Inside the link, we find 2 videos and a file called info.pdf. My exploration inside a strange tunnel I found in my Minecraft world. I've been playing in this world for a while, and I just discovered this. This is my documentation of the search. Notably, when I installed Minecraft, this world was already created. I always thought it was a bit strange, but I'm not so sure. When Avery explains that he didn't write the book in the video uploaded to his channel, he mentions that he's been playing Minecraft on a laptop he found in a storage locker. A laptop that already had the game installed. But the PDF file in the Google Drive directly mentions that the player installed Minecraft and the strange world appeared along with the game. And that's just one of several curious details. If we analyze the first video in the Google Drive titled Footage 1, the player has a completely different skin and inventory from Avery. At the moment of opening the chest inside the same mine, we notice that there isn't a book inside, but there is an empty book in the player's inventory. Everything found in this drive link was recorded from another player's point of view, the player who installed the game in the first place and who left his laptop in Ivory's storage locker after whatever happened to him. So it's not only strange how the world seems to have materialized, but also that it mirrors how he received the code. It materializes without any explanation, and it seems clear that it wasn't Ivory who shared the drive link in the first place, because, well, how could he have that information? Reviewing the videos in the drive, the first one starts in that same mine that we previously didn't know who had created. In this mine, the player finds a hidden cave behind the wall, and we start to notice unnatural things. First, there are layers of moss, and little by little, strange trees and blocks that are more and more out of place start to appear, until he comes across a huge cavern, which, as Cortana would say,
"This cave is not a natural formation. Someone built it, so it must lead somewhere."
This is important because absolutely everything in view could not have been generated by the game. From the strangely textured walls that are almost spherical, even the huge trees that haven't been seen in any other version. It's impossible, and that's exactly why it's so interesting. The player moves forward. Halfway up the wall on the other side of the cavern, we can see a tunnel lit by torches. And as he moves forward, the player notices that, one by one, the torches in the tunnel begin to disappear. I don't know what kind of sick joke this is, But I already heard you in the cave. I'm not scared of a game. I don't know why I just jumped. I wasn't scared, but I felt compelled. I had never felt like that in my whole life. That sound when the torches go out and the whispers you hear afterwards were captured directly by the player. We didn't add them, just like we didn't add the censoring of this new player's name. It seems like something very strange is happening here, and it gets worse when we pay attention to one of the things he says. I already heard you in the cave. What? Well, if we carefully review the section of the first cave, we'll see that the player pauses every so often. This isn't a coincidence because if we listen closely, something is following him very closely, and it stops just a fraction of a second after the player does. Our anonymous player continues. Among countless underwater tunnels, always choosing the left tunnel at the crossroads, he finally finds an oasis. But he knows he's not alone. He blocks the tunnel and sets a trap to see if he's still being followed. He decides to hide a chest underground with a hopper, known as tolva in Spanish, and fills the hopper with items. Then he lowers the render distance to a small number of chunks, because if he gets far enough away, the hopper won't be loaded, and it won't load items into the chest. But if the entity passes by and loads the chunks, the hopper will be empty and the items will be in the chest. While exploring, he finds several signs pointing to a specific place, and he sets his game to peaceful so he doesn't starve to death. He goes back and checks his trap. There are still items in the hopper. He checks the entrance, and even though everything seems fine to us, somehow he knows there's something there with him. This is for two reasons. The player set another trap, a dirt block next to another, so that the grass would spread if someone loaded the chunk. The grass did spread, which means that someone or something had to load that chunk. And if we look closely, the hopper still has the items. Yes, but they're in a different order. The entity refilled the hopper, hoping we wouldn't notice. The signs pointed to a complex maze, which ended in a gigantic chamber with levers on the floor and an encrypted message on the wall. Wifis' original video doesn't solve this message because, according to him, it doesn't seem to use any cipher he knows. The one who does seem to know how to solve it is the player, who even comments that he thinks it's a nice poem, but that it's bad practice to use one cipher on top of another. Yes, we'll come back to this in a moment. He also mentions that it seems to be a combination lock system, but unfortunately for you, I have a pickaxe. This leads him to a village that has been abandoned for some time, where cobwebs, the neglect of the floors, and even that suffocating silence that has marked these video files are overshadowed by the majestic statue of a golden angel without a defined head. In fact, the color yellow starts to become more and more present, because it's not only integrated into the palette of the wood used to build the houses, but also several of them seem to have entire blocks, carpets, and even flags of the same color. Darlord 3, because that's the player's name, seems lost. We know his name from a previous message where the censorship box disappears too early, which now that I think about it, seems curious. Why would he want to keep his name hidden? Anyway, after exploring even inside the fountain, Darlord discovers that there's nothing else to explore. Well, except for a dark church in the distance, hidden among the stones. Its interior looks normal, just as dilapidated as the rest of the village. But by pure coincidence, Darlord 3 finds an underground library, hidden as best as possible with a book inside. I hate this place. These idiots are unbearable. They think their devotion will save them, but I can assure you it won't. It's not like believing that will do them much good anyway. Those who realized it pretend they didn't, but it doesn't help that there are some of them who really believe they'll be saved. The king already has my... In any case, I bet their king is already here. He's watching me write this. I don't particularly care, I just want to finish this. The sooner I can leave, the better. He's arrived. I don't see why anyone is surprised. It's exactly what they expected. I'm leaving. I'll leave this in the unlikely event that someone else finds it. If you found this, I beg you, turn back, disconnect, forget this world. It's not for you. If you've come here, you must be curious. I know you must want to keep going. So I know this is a lot to ask, but please don't go any further. For your own good, don't do it. But their lord's curiosity is greater. Passing through a new and long tunnel behind the libraries, he reaches a crossroads. On the right side, there is a gray cavern that reminds us of the one at the beginning. A way out, a last chance to withdraw and continue with his life. But on the left, the world seemed to fall apart around him. With black blocks, impossibly empty, replacing the stone that seems to be erased from existence until their lord is completely surrounded by darkness. Whatever the player saw in that cavern behind the golden doors was not only cursed enough to be hidden behind all these warnings. Finally, he also understands that it's too much to show even to us. In fact, knowing what he knows now, he runs back to the surface through a cave that shouldn't be able to lead him to this mine where it all began. And just as he saw in the ruins, he takes the book and warns about everything that lies ahead. Ahead, that it's not possible to deceive him, that what is lurking hears him, watches him, and is not of this world. But more importantly, at the crossroads, do not turn left. Written 7 times, the same 7 times that their lord turned left, sealing his fate. This is where I need to reveal something I have intentionally left out. It turns out that the video I've referenced throughout this entire investigation comes from the same creator of all this, Wifis, which means that everything we've seen and everything we've been shown in this famous video is the story he wanted us to see, including all the information he decided to leave out. All those details you won't know if you only watch the original video, and it might not be a coincidence. This video behaves strangely. If you decide to search for the video's title on Google, the thumbnail of the world that doesn't exist will appear, but it will be different. A bright yellow figure will look back at you, which, interestingly, will disappear the moment you click on it to make it bigger, as if it was never there. As you can imagine, with 20 million views, the community, both on Reddit and YouTube, has dedicated itself to reviewing every little detail throughout the videos, along with what's behind the censored parts which, just like the main character, we're dying to find out. Well, the constant mentions of a mysterious king worshipped as a chaotic and destructive god, the use of the color yellow by his followers, the air of cosmic and psychological horror throughout all the videos, and the significant presence of a cursed city reminds many of us of something, The King in Yellow, a book by Robert William Chambers. This 1895 book contains several short stories, but its title is directly related to the first 4. And maybe some of the following ones, if we take into account some thematic similarities. The titular King in Yellow refers to the script of a play called The King in Yellow, around which the four stories revolve, and which mentally affects everyone who reads it. An effect that varies from person to person, and although we could sum it up by saying that it simply possesses them or drives them insane, that's not exactly it. The King in Yellow is a supernatural entity whose story speaks of a city called Carcosa with impossibly tall towers under black stars and twin moons. This being begins to present itself as a god capable of reanimating corpses and acquiring followers whom it controls after they read the play. And if some decide to resist or try to escape, it uses other followers, even if they are dead, to trap their souls. Yes, madness is central to the stories, almost serving as a commentary on the importance of reality versus illusion. But what it really represents is decay, destruction, death, and disease. The King in Yellow is entropy in the form of a mimetic virus, which affects you as soon as you read the cursed play. A play that, although everyone knows it leads to an early death, has an undeniable attraction for all the characters within the story, and is narratively contrasted with the apple from the Garden of Eden. What the characters who read the play experience is not really possession, but rather a disconnection from reality and an implicit subconscious urge to follow their most self-destructive tendencies. It is not until later that they begin to follow the King in Yellow, who seems to want total domination, even over thoughts that have not yet been born from the other side of the veil of reality. In fact, the statue in the middle of the village is not really an angel, but rather seems to be a statue of the King in Yellow himself. In the original story, he does not have wings, but he does appear with them in later illustrations and adaptations, mainly thanks to his appearances in the Cthulhu mythos. All this leads to a very interesting theory, and if we go back to the text found in the village, the villager tells whoever finds it to disconnect. Something that doesn't make any sense if we saw this as just a video game, and the villager as just a villager. No, knowing this, it seems that the game, the village, that world itself, has become little more than a trap, a new window through which the King in Yellow seeks to spread more and more. It could be that the supposed villagers were his followers, real people who had already read the work and began to follow him in the hope that he would manifest. And knowing that this king exists in Carcosa, an alien world, incomprehensibly strange and superior, it seems that the world is a representation of that place born from the thoughts of the entity. A way to materialize those memories into an enticing trap for those who would eventually want to find it. This is what makes all the codes that weren't deciphered in the original video so interesting, since we see that the king is powerful enough to alter the boundaries of wherever he is. Because this entity isn't trapped in Minecraft, but rather uses the game as a bridge to communicate with us. Which finally brings us to the poem. The poem is a pretty strange part of all this because, to begin with, the transcription given by Wifis in his video is incorrect. By looking directly at the text in the gameplay, it was necessary to rewrite everything correctly. And even so, there's still a pretty high margin of error because the resolution of the capture and the font of the text make everything very difficult. Also, many users with low IQs began making things up saying they'd already solved it, copying and pasting any poem related to the King in Yellow, or posting fragments of Casilda's song, or just making up an ugly poem that kind of fits the plot. The real solution, or at least part of it, was to use the word yellow, which is amarillo in Spanish, rotated 4 letters with a Caesar cipher, resulting in CIPSA. This word had to be used as the key in a Visionaire cipher, and at the end of it all, we received the incomplete poem, with the 3rd line still undefined. Finally, Wifis came to the rescue, providing us with the complete poem. Here it is, translated as best as possible. Under the melting golden sky, ancient echoes of a shepherd's mold. An old rot floods to the left. It's the unseen truth, anything but false. The real meaning of this poem is widely debated. The first line, for example, refers to a golden sky, but we don't actually see any golden sky in any of the videos, so I tend to think it's metaphorical. A golden sky is a yellow sky, with this color covering everything around, melting and staining the very earth itself. It is the king permeating all of reality. The second line is stranger because mold could mean a lot of things, but the word shepherd gives us an interesting clue. A shepherd not only protects his flock, but also guides it. He is a religious figure, usually attributed to God guiding his followers. But in this context, it seems to refer to the king in yellow. He never appeared, but little by little he led their Lord to the golden gates, guiding him subliminally, using his fear of the entity against him, taking advantage of his curiosity, and subtly controlling him, making him jump into the lake after what happened in the tunnel of torches. Remember, their Lord didn't even feel fear, he just felt compelled to jump. The third line is more obvious. It refers to the fact that every time he chose the left path at the crossroads, it brought him closer to decay, to the abandoned village, and the king in yellow, or whatever he found behind the doors, which brings us to the fourth line. The unseen truth could be many things, but in this context it seems to refer to what was found at the end. Something that their Lord saw but we didn't. A truth we can't comprehend, but that is anything but false. This gives us more questions than answers regarding what dear Lord found, but it points us to another interesting element in all of this. Remember the set of numbers we mentioned that also lacked an answer? Well, it turns out that code is actually translated by Wifis right at the end of his original video, using a somewhat complicated method that combines the inventory code used earlier with the position of the items, noted in the numbers from the text. It translates to "Run, Avery, it's here," and it tells us that their Lord, in some incomprehensible way, knew that Avery would find his laptop sometime later, enter the world of Minecraft, and be hunted by the king in yellow. Remember, the truth is anything but false. It seems that, in a very Lovecraftian way, those who are confronted by that unseen truth of the king in yellow gain total knowledge beyond their imagination, and they show that they know the future. And not just their Lord, who understands that Avery has no escape against an entity with those abilities and warns him ahead of time, but also whoever wrote the poem, because they knew in advance that their Lord would censor that truth. At 36 minutes and 8 seconds, we can see that, without any explanation, their Lord's inventory changes. This is right when we hear the same sound that indicated the arrival of the entity in the torch incident, which seems to suggest that it is the entity, or the king himself, who makes this change. Well, if we use the same inventory code shown by Wifis at the beginning of the video, and then try different rotational ciphers, we will arrive at the following message. Interestingly, and thanks to the fact that English is more contextual than Spanish, this can be translated in two different ways: the nameless brother of the yellow sign, or more likely, the nameless yellow sign brother. Due to the grammar, the second translation seems more likely, but without external confirmation, it's best to clarify that either could be correct. But what is the yellow sign? In the stories of Robert Chambers, the yellow sign is the symbol of the king in yellow, in the same way that a crucifix is the symbol of the Catholic God. But this one has additional powers, although they are never explained directly. From what we see in the Repairer of Reputations, it is an emblem that, when seen, makes the person susceptible to external control either from the king or his followers. The sign brings corruption and decay, and it can be seen drawn on a piece of paper or as a physical sign on another material, like with the sign of Vonis from the story. The yellow sign, a physical sign with strong psychological effects, which precedes the arrival of the king in yellow into the lives of the unfortunate people who find it. The word brother makes me think that their Lord is already considered another member of the cult of the king in yellow, since this sign is also used by his followers. After all, it is their emblem, and it may be that this was the last thing his eyes saw at the end of the last video, an emblem that let the king in yellow and all his knowledge, his decay, and his corruption into their Lord's mind. But we forgot something very important. You only need to read the work of the king to be affected, right? Maybe all of this was another act by the aberrant shepherd in yellow, subtly guiding us so that we would learn the story. Because if that's true, the real risk isn't seeing what their Lord finds behind the doors and censors for our protection, but witnessing everything he saw, reading the story in the village, or deciphering the poem. Because, think about it, who shared the link in the first place? Was their Lord really warning future visitors? Or was the king in yellow tricking more people into learning the story, using their Lord and Avery all this time? Using all the ciphers, codes, and secrets to draw us into the story, and making us unknowingly spread that virus, expanding the king in yellow's dominion. Maybe our protagonist was drawn in by exactly what he wanted most: answers, information, words and books, knowledge. But when he realized what it really was, he used the last of his sanity to warn Avery, a warning that seems to have fallen on deaf ears and ended up drawing her in, making her continue the search. Because the last post on the community tab of Avery's channel is a screenshot of him at the final crossroads, right before turning left to see what's hidden behind the golden doors.